In the quiet late afternoon in a small industrial area on the outskirts of Seoul, Suga of BTS stepped out of a black vehicle that had stopped in a semi-open parking space, wearing a loose black Essentials t-shirt, soft fabric lounge pants, black sandals revealing the tips of his toes, a white medical mask covering most of his face, and a black cap that added to the casual impression far removed from the stage spotlight. He appeared unhurried, walking at a steady pace toward the door of a modest-looking building with panel-covered walls and small warm-toned lights glowing among the lengthening shadows of the afternoon. The air still carried the mildness of late summer transitioning into early autumn, with a faint aroma of coffee drifting from a cafe at the end of the street, as Suga adjusted his cap with a brief movement before entering the interior. Inside, the atmosphere felt more private, with low wooden tables and musical equipment in the corner, suggesting the place served a purpose beyond casual gatherings. A few staff members were arranging cables and audio devices, while a photographer sat in the back preparing a camera without much fuss. Suga stood for a moment, observing the layout of the room before moving toward a table near a large window, where a staff member placed a bottle of water and a few thin folders. His movements were measured, as if accustomed to this routine, dropping by a location, checking details, and preparing for a session that required full concentration. Outside, the sky was losing its brightness, casting a golden tone that reflected on the metal door surface. A few people nearby took brief notice, but there was no crowd or disruption, as the location was not on a busy public route. Suga sat briefly, checked something on his phone with a calm expression, and nodded slightly toward a staff member seemingly in charge of scheduling. Everything unfolded in a natural rhythm, like part of a daily work routine that did not demand large attention, though the presence of a BTS member at such a site carried its own subtle intrigue for those who knew. His visit this time resembled a professional activity with a personal tone, possibly to develop ideas with a team or discuss an ongoing creative project. There was no sign of media or fans, allowing him to be in a more relaxed environment, while still maintaining the aura of an artist focused on his craft. Gradually, the room's energy grew as some devices were tested, small lights switched on, and laptop screens displayed files that might contain song drafts, visual concepts, or upcoming schedules. Suga remained seated in a relaxed posture, his eyes scanning every detail handled by those around him, as if absorbing information before providing precise input. Known for not speaking more than necessary, his presence in such moments was defined by observation, meticulousness, and sensitivity to atmosphere. As time passed, the light from the window dimmed, making the indoor lamps the main source of illumination, while outside activity lessened. Inside, the environment stayed balanced between the seriousness of work and informal comfort, with everyone seemingly aware of their respective roles. Suga took a sip from the water bottle in front of him, set it down quietly, then shifted his wrist as if checking the time, though it was unclear whether he was looking at the clock or simply moving out of habit. Meetings like this might seem ordinary to most, but in the Korean entertainment world, any moment when a BTS member meets with others often sparks speculation, even if the reality is often just part of the continuous creative process behind the scenes. When a staff member approached carrying additional documents, Suga accepted them with a slight nod and studied the pages for a while, as though ensuring everything was in order before continuing with the discussion. Outside, streetlights began to glow, marking the transition from afternoon to night, and the meeting in that room carried on at a steady pace, without any sense of rush, as if time itself was arranged to give space for the flow of ideas and the quiet collaboration taking place among them. In the early evening, the quiet atmosphere outside contrasted with the soft hum of activity inside the building as Suga remained in his seat, occasionally shifting his position while keeping his attention on the materials spread before him, his body language reflecting a steady engagement with the flow of the meeting. A small speaker in the corner emitted low instrumental tracks that blended into the background, serving as a subtle underscore to the work being done. The staff moved with practiced coordination, one adjusting a monitor on a stand, while another arranged cables along the floor to keep the space clear. Suga leaned forward slightly, examining a set of printed images that had been placed on the table, his fingers resting lightly on the paper as his eyes traced the details. There was no rush in his movements, only a careful pace that seemed to match the measured tempo of the entire room. The golden tones of the sunset had faded into a cooler blue that seeped through the large window, while the indoor lighting created a focused yet comfortable work environment. Outside, the occasional sound of a passing vehicle was barely noticeable, muffled by the building's structure. Suga set aside the papers, took another small sip of water, and glanced at a laptop screen that a staff member had turned toward him, scanning the contents with a calm but attentive expression. The exchange of tasks and information between him and the team unfolded seamlessly, without the need for overt gestures or lengthy explanations, as though each person already understood their roles and contributions. A camera shutter clicked softly in the background, capturing moments of the session, possibly for internal documentation rather than public release. The faint aroma of tea wafted in from the back of the room, where another staff member placed a tray on a side counter. Suga acknowledged it with a slight nod, but did not immediately reach for a cup, staying focused on the files in front of him. The rhythm of the evening was unhurried, marked by a sense of quiet productivity that allowed for both concentration and a relaxed state of mind. On the far wall, a whiteboard displayed a neat arrangement of handwritten notes, bullet points, and diagrams that hinted at an ongoing project, though the details remained within the bounds of the team. Suga adjusted his seating again, crossing one leg over the other, and tapped his foot lightly in a motion that kept time with the soft background music. The room's temperature was maintained at a comfortable level, the soft airflow from a vent above barely perceptible but adding to the overall ease of the environment. Every so often, a staff member would lean over the table to point at a specific section of a document, and Suga would respond with a small nod or brief glance before making a mark with the pen in his hand. The coordination between them suggested a long familiarity, the kind that allows a group to operate with minimal verbal exchange yet high efficiency. In the midst of the work, there was no intrusion from the outside world. No ringing phones, no disruptive noises, just the shared focus of a small team in the same physical and mental space. As the hours slipped further into the evening, the lighting outside transitioned into full darkness, the glass window now reflecting the warm glow of the interior rather than offering a view of the street. Suga leaned back slightly, setting his pen down, and observed the table with a thoughtful look, as though mentally reviewing the progress made so far. The quiet murmur of conversation from one corner blended with the gentle sound of fingers typing on a laptop, filling the air with a subtle but consistent working rhythm. In this enclosed setting, the presence of Suga felt less like that of a public figure and more like that of a dedicated professional deeply involved in shaping his work alongside a trusted team. As night settled fully over the area, the building's interior became a contained pocket of light and quiet movement, with Suga still seated at the same table, his posture relaxed yet attentive, his gaze shifting between the open laptop screen and a small stack of neatly arranged papers beside it. The steady hum of an air purifier blended with the faint instrumental music still playing in the background, creating an atmosphere that was neither tense nor idle, but somewhere in between, an environment where focus was natural and uninterrupted. A staff member approached with a thin portable hard drive, placing it on the table near the laptop, and Suga gave a brief nod before plugging it in, scanning through the files that appeared on the screen. The reflection of the light in his eyes hinted at the depth of his concentration, while his hand occasionally moved the cursor with precise, unhurried motions. At another part of the room, someone adjusted a lighting stand, its beam directed toward a small setup that looked prepared for a quick photo or video capture, though it was not yet in use. The faint sound of footsteps echoed briefly each time someone crossed the smooth floor, and the gentle click of a pen or shuffle of paper added subtle texture to the stillness. Outside, the street beyond the window was almost entirely empty, the occasional headlights of a passing car casting fleeting streaks of brightness across the room's reflective surfaces. Suga shifted slightly in his chair, leaned forward, and tapped a few keys before pausing to make a handwritten note in the margin of a document. His movements were deliberate, as though each small action served a clear purpose within the ongoing process. The tea from earlier had cooled on the side counter, untouched, while the bottle of water beside him was now half empty. Across the table, a staff member quietly sorted through a set of photo prints, sliding them into a protective folder after a quick review. In the corner, The photographer who had been present earlier was now reviewing images on a large monitor, making occasional adjustments to brightness and framing. Suga glanced up once, observing the screen for a brief moment, then returned to his own work without breaking the flow. The balance of silence and light ambient sound in the room seemed to encourage a steady rhythm of productivity without any sense of rush. The walls, with their muted colors and minimal decoration, offered no distractions, keeping the attention of everyone inside centered on the tasks at hand. A faint vibration from Suga's phone drew his attention momentarily. He picked it up, glanced at the screen, then set it face down again, continuing with his review of the files. The night outside deepened, the streetlights casting long shadows across the ground, while inside, the scene remained consistent, calm, organized, and entirely focused. A staff member placed a new folder on the edge of the table, and Suga reached for it without hesitation, flipping it open and scanning its contents with the same meticulous care he had shown throughout the evening. The clock on the wall indicated the passing of several hours, yet there was no visible sign of fatigue on his face, only the steady presence of someone accustomed to long stretches of concentrated work. The combination of dimmed overhead lights and task lighting on the table created a cocoon-like space, insulating them from the outside world. Every gesture, from the way papers were turned to the way devices were handled, seemed part of a familiar routine, carried out with quiet precision. It was the kind of setting where progress was made in incremental, deliberate steps, and Suga's place within it felt natural, as if this blend of creativity, technical focus, and quiet collaboration was exactly where he was meant to be at that hour. As the evening continued into its later hours, the room maintained its steady pulse of activity, with Suga remaining at the center of the table, his presence calm yet anchoring for the small team around him. The glow from the laptop screen illuminated his face as he scrolled through a sequence of files, occasionally stopping to enlarge a section or compare two images side by side. The ambient music had shifted to softer tones, almost blending into the quiet air, while the hum of nearby electronics filled in the silence between the light movements of the people present. Across from him, a staff member carefully labeled a stack of external drives, aligning them neatly in a small case, while another adjusted the brightness of the desk lamp to better illuminate the documents in front of them. Suga leaned back for a moment, exhaling slowly, then reached for his pen and made a concise note in the margin of a page before sliding it toward the edge of the table for collection. The photographer, still in the corner, reviewed a final batch of shots, his monitor displaying muted tones and clean lines, suggesting a restrained and deliberate visual style. The sound of a door opening briefly interrupted the stillness as someone entered carrying a slim black bag, which was set down quietly on an empty chair. From it, they retrieved a thin laptop and joined the work without disruption. Outside the window, the reflection of the room's warm lighting was now fully dominant, the street beyond completely dark except for the occasional wash of light from a passing car. Suga took a moment to adjust his seating, crossing one ankle over the other, his gaze shifting toward the whiteboard that still displayed a series of neatly written notes and diagrams. He studied it for a few seconds, as though mentally aligning it with the materials on his table, before returning his focus to the laptop. The pace of the work never wavered. There was no sudden rush, only a continuous, even flow of review, organization, and quiet decision-making. A faint rustle of paper signaled another staff member preparing a fresh set of files, which they placed within his reach without a word. Suga's hand moved over the pages with practiced ease, turning each one with a light touch, his expression neutral but engaged. The tea on the counter had long gone cold, yet the bottle of water remained within easy reach, its cap resting loosely on top. Near the far wall, two staff members exchanged brief glances before adjusting a set of cables, ensuring they were secured along the baseboard. The space itself felt insulated from the passing of time, its simple furnishings and muted colors keeping the focus entirely on the work being done. The clock's hands moved steadily toward the later part of the night, yet no one appeared hurried to finish. Instead, there was a quiet certainty that the session would continue until the necessary points had been covered. Suga tapped the laptop's trackpad, closed a folder, and opened another, the screen's glow shifting to display a list of neatly titled files. His fingers rested briefly on the keyboard before he typed a short series of commands, then leaned back once more, eyes scanning the display. Around him, the small team continued their respective tasks, the cohesion between them evident in the absence of unnecessary movement or noise. In that space, the outside world felt distant, the work unfolding at its own deliberate pace, each small action contributing to a larger, unseen outcome, and Suga's quiet focus serving as the steady thread holding it all together through the deepening night.